All right, we're learning this beautiful speech given by the Lubavitcher Rebbe in 1991. 1991. And the fact is that several months after this, as the Rebbe would have a stroke, and it would render him paralyzed. And then for almost 2 years. And then on the third day of Tammuz, the Rebbe passed away. Or at least that's how you can interpret it. I mean, there was a burial and there was everything. But the fact is that first of all, Tzaddikim never die. And as we just learned in our mimer, that we said that Yaakov didn't die, and there's another place in Gemara and Sota that Moses didn't die. And we say that David Melech Yisrael Chai V'Kayom, David is, how can it be that they didn't die? I mean, Yaakov, we go to in Hebron, Marta Machpelah, he's buried over there. And the same thing with King David, even though there's some people say maybe that's not as great, but King David says clearly that he died. So the answer is that it's not really understandable, what death is and what a Jew is, and especially what a Jewish body is. According to the Tanya, it's explained that a Jew's body is even higher than a Jew's soul. And that's the whole secret of the raising of the dead, that the bodies will raise up and they'll be higher than the soul. The soul will come into the body. How this is going to happen, I don't know. But the main point of the whole thing is the importance of this physical world and everything that happens in it, in every detail, and the importance of us being a partner in God in every detail and every occurrence. And that's what the Rebbe explained these last few days, why it is that these miracles that we talked about, the sun stood still on the 3rd of Tammuz for Joshua, and the staff of Aaron, that was before that, the staff of Aaron grew flowers and buds and fruits. And the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe was released from prison but sent to exile. And then only after that was he released from exile into Russia. And then after that, he had to go to another place. And then it was, why did all these things happen in a way that was unfolding? Why couldn't the miracle just be a miracle and that's it, change nature? And the Rebbe said, because all of these miracles were in order to show us the holiness of nature, the holiness of the process, to put godliness into the world by means of our partnership with God. No doubt that these things were big miracles, but all of them demanded a certain effort on our side as well. So that's what the Rebbe said. That's the whole idea of this 4th month, namely the month of Tammuz, which was the month which was of redemption, especially the 3rd of Tammuz, the 11th, the 12th of Tammuz. That's when the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe was released from prison. Now, this thing of the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, I mean, this is just a Chabad thing, right? It's not at all. Not at all. It appears to be. That's how it starts off. But the fact of the matter is that it's not. In every generation, there has to be a Moshiach, one person that really worries for and actively does everything possible to at least begin the process. And every Jew in the world should know what God is and should do the Torah and all of its commandments. And even though that the Rebbe, it was a process that, I mean, the Rebbe doesn't mention that here, but it was a process that the Rebbe, previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, he was the Moshiach of his generation, no doubt about it. And that as soon as he came to America, he was already paralyzed. They brought him in a wheelchair. He started spreading out Judaism. And the other leaders of Judaism, they were tremendously opposed to him. This was a totally new thing. Everyone wanted to remain isolated, and the Rebbe was destroying the isolation. And he was destroying the the, how do you call it? The bidud. I don't remember what the word is. This is a really good word. Anyway, I'll think of the word. Anyway, so he's destroying the isolation. You know, the thing you put on when you want, like you want the elements not to be in your house, you do. The word skipped my mind. Okay. Anyway, so the Rebbe was destroying this wall that the religious Judaism had built to protect itself from the world. And the Rebbe said, good, you're protecting yourself from the world, but you're not allowing just to do your job. You have to spread out Judaism. And this is a gradual process until we learned last week that on the 25th day, 29th, the 28th day of Sivan in 1941, that's when the present Lubavitcher Rebbe arrived. And then he really started to spread out Judaism. So it's a process. The end of the process is going to be the raising of the dead. So everybody's going to raise up. All the dead people are not really dead. And that's the whole idea, to transform the nature of the world until the world becomes rich. And that's what the Rebbe said. Remember, we learned this before. I'm just going over it. The Rebbe said that's the difference between the letter Resh and the letter Tuf, that's the only difference between Chukat and Korach. Korach has Kuf, Chet, and Resh. Chukat as a Kuf, a Chet, and a Tuf. The letter Tuf, the difference between a Resh and a Tuf is that it has a leg that comes down into the physical world to make the physical world a holy place as well. From all this we said before, and that's the whole process, all the details of the world. From what we said before, there's a lot of things we can learn. Whether in the general service of man, or whether related to even one man, yourself, or in your relationship to the world. Whether we're talking about Torah and commandments, whether we're talking about regular, mundane, optional things. Insulation. Oh, that's the word. To remove the insulation. Also, b'miuchad, b'kesher megula, and the redemption of the third day of Tammuz. Now, again, the third day of Tammuz, that was the day that Joshua stopped the sun in order to win this battle. That was the day that the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe got out of prison, where death was almost certain. He got out of prison. And that was the day when this Rebbe began the process of the raising of the dead. The Rebbe, according to all appearances, he seemed to pass away. I mean, he was buried and everything. And so did Jacob. And nevertheless, it says that Jacob is alive. And it says in the Torah also that Moses, that he died. Didn't exactly say that he died, but anyway, the Moses. So did they really die or did they not? Of course they did. But they're also alive. Does this make sense? Of course not. It's above understanding, but that's what's happening. The essence of God is not understandable. And all of these is connected to one thing, spreading out Torah and Judaism, and especially Chassidut. Especially that there's a commandment, you had to put the staff of Aaron, that the staff of Aaron had almonds on it, but it also had the whole process on it. And it stayed there. The flowers with the buds. And this has to be kept for preserved as a sign. What's the sign? A sign that I chose Aaron to be a priest. That when that it says Yeshayahu, the king, Shayahu, something like less than 100 years before the destruction of the first temple, is he hid the ark with the tablets in it. So he also hid the staff of Aaron with it. It says that it had the almonds and the flowers to show the whole process. So it's understood that there is some sort of an eternal teaching for all generations. Since it's every single Jew is one of the Mamlechet Kohanim, we are a nation of priests. We are a nation of high priests. Like the Rambam says, not only the tribe of Levi alone, but every single person, it doesn't even say every Jew, every person that has his spirit arouses in him that he wants to serve God, so he can be called the Holy of Holies. So it's understood that each and every Jew has to be something like the staff of Aaron that has on it flowers and buds and almonds. What do you mean? To show that God has chosen us, and He has chosen us that we should make miracles, but we have to be partners. We have to do our part. There came out flowers and buds, and in other words, the whole process becomes holy, becomes a big miracle. But it has to be a partnership between us and God in everything we do, and every detail then becomes holy. That's why the Torah, is in the Holy of Holies, has all these details about Korach, who was a bad guy. And even worse, there was Bilam, there was Lavan, there were these evil people. And the Torah tells us about them because it's telling us that all of these things can be redeemed somehow or other in the future. Even Amalek. The way to redeem them is to destroy them, but we have to do it though. And that's rare. Most of the rest of the world will want to be attached to the Creator. The Creator is creating them. Only those people who love death, so God will give them what they want. They love death, they want to kill, so they'll get killed. Even that the service of a Jew has to be in a way of Kabbalat Ol, of accepting the yoke of God, in other words, doing what God says without understanding, Shalamayla Vitam Badas, above understanding, even learning Torah, learning Kabbalah, to understand that's we're doing it because God says we should do it. What does God care if we understand Kabbalah or we understand the Torah? What does He care? The fact that God Himself personally cares, this is above understanding. But generally speaking, we're saying we should serve God and not ask any questions. Like Abraham did. Abraham, God said, take your son and kill him. Just a few minutes earlier, God said, your son is going to be the source of the Jewish people. He's going to have children. The offspring will be like the stars of the heaven, the sand on the sea, right? And he's going to get the land of Canaan. But before he gets all this, Abraham, take him and kill him. And Abraham said, oh, okay, no problem. So either it means that Abraham just didn't have any sense at all. How could he take a son? Or it means this is some sort of a new service of God that's just completely incomprehensible. It's above understanding. That's called serving God b'kol miodecha. Even though we're supposed to serve God with all of our being, which that can only be done if we don't have any reservations. We don't think about it at all. Only this reaches the unlimitedness of God, which is above. So there's a place to think. You might think, that's it. Just serve God like a robot. And whatever God says, like Abraham, God says to do it, you do it. You don't try to understand. Like it says, if God would have commanded us just to chop wood, we would chop wood. But nevertheless, that's not so. That's only one aspect of serving God. Yesh no ara, we have a teaching from the staff of Aaron, that after we say, okay, God, I'll do whatever you say, I'm not asking any questions, as yacholot tzaricha, then you are able, and you need afterwards to bring this point, which is above understanding, that there should be in all of your powers, even mitziot b'tivo, even into your intellect, until there are fruits, flowers, buds, but often it's just a tivo that your whole being. It's not that you put your whole existence aside, right? They have these Eastern religions. You've got no mother, you have no father, you have no past, you have no future, you have no friends. You are, all there is you. You are just a wave in the sea and a beam in the sky and the this and that, right? So, okay, listen, there's a point to that. There certainly is a point to that. You can't understand anything. But on the other hand, that's just a point. afterwards, that point has to grow into a flower, into a bud, into fruits. That all of your being, all of your potential, your whole entire personality, don't throw it in the garbage. Your whole entire personality, don't wipe it out. Your personality is potentially holy. Bring this point of unity with God into every detail of your personality, how you deal with others, how you'll put your talents that you have to bring them out. It comes in a way of quickness. It how do you say, enlivens you, empowers you. Teva Mizuras, a person in Judaism becomes holy. What does it mean? He becomes alive. He becomes active in the world. Like King David, it said he didn't even sleep, King David. Moses, he was active the last day of his life, as he wrote 13 Sefer Torahs. Holiness enlivens you, it invigorates you, rejuvenates you. Oh, that's a little joke over there. That everything that a person does with his natural powers, he does it because he realizes he's imbued this point of God in everything he does. So he does it, therefore, with tremendous life. Zrizus to Kedusha. That was the thing of Aaron, that his staff grew up these almonds and everything quickly. Almond is the quickest thing to grow, quickest fruit. 21 days, it says. There is a similar. There is also, we can also learn in the mundane things that a Jew does. Before we were talking about Torah, holy things. What about the mundane things you do? Business. Business. Everybody has a business. You make money from something. The Kol Rosh, you have to learn from the flowers of the staff of Aaron that God made to be preserved, that we had to learn from forever, that we can learn from the Tzinsenet Aman. It's also, it says that another thing that was hidden with the Ark and the Torah and the tablets and the broken tablets are also there. And the staff of Aaron, there is also the jar of manna that is also put there together with the ark. This remains as a preserved for all generations. Shekasher ben Israel, that when the Jewish people ta'anu lirich, when they complained to Jeremiah, the prophet, that he said, Lama eina atem oskim b'Torah, he said, why aren't you learning Torah? The Jewish people said, Naniach malachteinu v'nasach b'Torah, if we leave our work and we work in Torah, me'echa nitparnes, where are we going to get food from? Otzi Yirmiyahu, so Jeremiah, he took out this jar of manna, and he said, Re'u b'zeh, take a look, v'nitparnesu, Re'u, take a look, b'zeh nitparnesu avosecha. Your forefathers in the desert, this is what enlivened them for 40 years. Harbe shluchim yesh lamakom. God has a lot of emissaries, le'echin mazon li'orev, to prepare food for those who fear him. Right? A person that sits aside to learn Torah all the time, and someone can come and say to him, listen, I got a good job for you. You can learn computers, right? You work from your house for an hour. You'll see, okay, he takes a course. All of a sudden, he realizes he's a genius in computers. Another guy learns the whole day, sits and learning the whole day. Says, listen, I got a job for you. I'm leaving my store. I need someone to work on my store, to manage my store. Can you do it for 1 hour a day? All of a sudden, he realizes he's great at it. He gets done in 1 hour, whatever other people get done in 7 hours. There's people. And so it is. Everybody, amazingly, God arranges for them something to do. This person becomes a teacher, and this person becomes a helper, and this becomes a coacher, and this person becomes a painter. There's everybody suddenly, God reveals, God takes care of his creations. Alder says, similarly, there's the learning of Perach at the Aaron, that the staff of Aaron grew flowers, shkedim, food, gedolim, in a miraculous way. Alder says, similarly, benogea leparnas b'nei Israel. Now, we're not saying just sit around in your front yard and on a hammock just open up your mouth and wait for manna to come from heaven. We're talking about that person, he learns Torah, he does the commandments, he helps other people, and then when he does these things, then God helps him. And some people have to work a little bit harder, they have to work more, but a person that decides that he's going to give himself over to learning the Torah for God, he sees miracles. And maybe I can give you an example for myself. I lived in Bnei Brak for 4 years. When I lived in Bnei Brak, I didn't work. I learned in these places called kollels. A kollel, you sit and you learn Torah. And they pay you something. How much did they pay you? Like $200 a month. Some ridiculous pittance. So you go and you learn in a couple of kollels and you get enough money that you get by, and your wife finds some sort of a job, babysitting or something like that. And it's enough to pay the rent and to get, basic food on your table. When I was in Bnei Brak, I bought the majority of books that I bought in Bnei Brak. I always had another shekel in my pocket, another this and and I would go and I would buy books. And it didn't take any food off of our table. And it didn't remove any clothes from our backs. And we managed to pay the electricity, and we managed to pay. How that worked to this day, I have absolutely no idea. Absolutely no idea. True, okay. But nevertheless, it worked. The Yiddish, on the other hand, it says that God will bless you in everything that you do. How it'll happen, you have to not rely on God totally. You have to work naturally. Just like the staff of Aaron. What happened to the staff of Aaron? It says it miraculously grew these almonds, but the process was a natural one. It was a natural process. That came by means of masav amatan be'amuna. How does this happen? You work in your job, but you work faithfully. You don't cheat, you don't lie, you don't trick, you have no jealousy, you have no anger. B'hizgalus the teva ha'olam. B'hagbalus the teva ha'olam. You work according to the nature of the world. Chadur be'amuna b'Hashem, permeated by faith in God, even when you're working in the world. But you are working in the world. Shemamin b'chai olam v'zoreah. It says in the beginning of the Talmud, in the Jerusalem Talmud, in Brachot, that the difference between a Jewish farmer and a non-Jewish farmer is that a Jewish farmer, he believes in the creator of the world, and then he plants. He prays to God and he believes that if his crops work, that it's not nature that made it work, it's God that made it work. No, if God made it work, then don't plant at all. Don't plant at all. What do you have to plant for? What do you have to work so hard? And you plow, and you have to buy seeds, and then you plant the seeds, and then you have to harvest the seeds, and then you have to do this. What do you have to? I thought God is the boss of everything. Let him do it all. He says, no. God wants to be a partner. And he wants to, on the other hand, there's millions of non-Jewish farmers, and they don't pray to God, and their crops grow very fine. What's wrong? What do you have to? He says, okay, that's their crops. Their crops grow because maybe they don't have to believe in God, but my crops not. My crops are different. I believe in God. What's the difference? That was the difference between Aaron and everybody else. They also brought their staffs. They did the same work that Aaron did, but Aaron really believed in God, and he really believed that God would provide for him. And sure enough, he did the same thing as everybody else, but his staff grew almonds. Now, almonds, you can go down to the store and buy almonds. You don't have to have a miraculous staff to buy almonds. But these almonds are different almonds. These are almonds that God made grow. And the other almonds are also that God made grow, but not in a revealed way. Then if you believe in the creator of the universe, then this becomes a vessel to receive the blessings of God. The parnasa, that your livelihood comes in a miraculous way. But a miraculous miracle like this, it'll be a miracle that will be enclosed in the world. Just like Joshua stopped the sun and the moon. You stopped the sun. It was a natural thing that happened in a miraculous way. Afterwards, Joshua had to fight, right? We'll find out how the nature of the world and even the non-Jews themselves will help the Jewish people to get their livelihood, and this will help the whole world. Like we see, especially in our last generation, that God blessed the Jewish people that they should receive their livelihood in a way which required a lot less effort. Menuchat nefesh, menuchat guf. Right? Just simply with internet, nowadays you don't have to leave your house and go out into the streets. You can sit in your house and you can do work. And you can even make more money than even the previous generations because the world helps you. Exactly the opposite. Now things are easier, but not only are they easier, but also you can connect with more people. You can get more done. From this, we can learn, especially, from this, we can learn something, especially in the service of spreading out the Torah and the commandments incomparably more after the miracle of the previous Rebbe on the 3rd of Tammuz and Yud Beis and Yud Gimel Tammuz. We could say that we'd learned about this before. Remember the three things we say: Yafutzu, Ma'anetecha Chutza, spreading out your well springs outward. That's what the Baal Shem Tov said would bring Moshiach. Spread your well springs outward. This was said to the Baal Shem Tov. Baal Shem Tov was in Ukraine, Russia. And this was really taken very seriously and actively by the Rebbes of Chabad. But they were trapped in Russia. But nevertheless, these three things, spreading out your well springs outward, this is like the three things we learned about the letter Daled. Yafutzu, we said there has to be, first of all, Dalut. There has to be humility. Ma'inotecha, your well springs, that's the upper line. That's like the source. Kad Lamaila. And Chutza, this is the line that comes down, that ends at from above to below. So there's the other places explains it also. The letter Resh and the letter Dalet are almost exactly similar. But the letter Dalet has a little point in the back of it. A little point in the back of it. That little point that says that's bittul, surrender. Then when you have that surrender, then the rest of the line, that's on the top. That's on the top, spreading out like a wellspring spreads out. And the line that comes down, that means not just to spread out, learning on your own, to learn more, but also to come down into the lowest levels. That's the Daled. That's this 4th month, the Daled. That's what a Jew should do, that he should spread out his teachings of the Rebbe outward. This is what is going to bring the Mashiach. And this is what we will continue, God willing, tomorrow. Tomorrow is Friday, 8:15 in the morning. We'll continue and finish this Sikha of the Rebbe, the Dvar Malchut of the Rebbe. What we can learn from Gimel Tammuz, how we can bring Mashiach, and the raising of the dead. Now let's learn the Yomium. What's this? Okay, Mesirut Nefesh, self-sacrifice. Sacrifice. So self-sacrifice can mean that you're willing to give your life for Judaism, or you give your money, or so self-sacrifice for Torah scholars means Adam ki amut ba'ohel. a person has to put to death, so to speak, all of his pleasures in the worldly matters, even for trivial worldly delights, right? Being praised by people, getting your picture in the paper. If you get connected to these things, these can be obstacles to being truly devoted and dedicated to learning Torah. Learning Torah has to be without attachment to the world. You should eat, you sleep, you put on clothes, you can live in a nice house, but you're not connected to those things. What you're connected to is the Torah. Have a good day with Moshiach now. God willing, 3:00. We're going to learn the Haftorah of this week about Yiftach. Hope to see you. Shalom Uvracha.